everyone. We've got a big question on the table for this panel, which is what can companies do to encourage their employees to lead healthier lifestyles? But we were talking backstage, and Bernard, you've got an interesting anniversary this week. Could you share it with the crowd?
Sure. It's really great to be here. This week is a very special week for me. 10 years ago, I went into complete heart failure, and it was during this week. And I was fortunate that they got me to the emergency department in time to put me into a coma. So I was in an induced coma for 3 days. Brought out, and they said that I had ruined my heart valve, and they needed to do open heart surgery. And I had them to send me to my Kaiser hospital in San Francisco.
Right.
I often tell the story that it wasn't a political move. It was my belief that that was the best place for me to have the surgery. So I ended up having my heart valve actually was okay, but I ended up having double bypass surgery.
Right.
So,
Clogged arteries.
Yeah, clogged arteries. So I had the heart situation on September the 24th, and I had the open heart surgery on September 29th, 2006.
Right. And so your job is to create a culture at Kaiser where people lead healthier lives, but it sounds like you've got a bit of support group yourself. People are encouraging you to do that.
Well, I mean, I've been working on a formula for the last decade that's paid off big time for me. It's around eating healthy, exercise, managing stress, and enjoying life. And I'm very open and transparent, so everybody knows I have a bad habit of eating potato chips, and I'm working on that every single day. And people come around and say, "Did you eat any potato chips today?" You know, all in my business. And but I do that, and I enforce certain policies in the company because I believe in them strongly. So we don't provide sugar drinks because it's not good for you. And people have argued with me, you know, this is America, we drink what we want to drink. And I tell them, sure, you're just not going to buy it right here.
Right.
And people have accepted that. I told you a story about my board. We have a new food policy, and so we only serve certain foods during the day. And I went to my board meeting, and it was almost the last agenda item. I said to the board, you know, we should walk our talk. And so going forward, I've changed our menu as well. And the board was all into it. They were fine until I mentioned a particular item. I said, and we're not going to serve bacon anymore. And this is a true story. One of my board members said, "What?" And I said, "No, we're not going to serve bacon." And he said, "Why not?" And I told him why not. And he said, "That's not correct. Bacon is fine." So we got into a big argument about bacon. So I finally said, "Okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll provide a couple of slices of bacon." So every board meeting after that, I had a strict rule of only 6 slices of bacon. And what they ended up doing was, I came in one morning after working out, and I went into the area and I said, "This is great, it's working. No one will eat the 6 slices of bacon." And then someone on my staff says, "Sir, they're actually rotating 6 slices at a time." So I get it, but it's a journey that we're on.
That's great.
But you should talk about what you've learned after 10 years, how your heart's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, religiously I have heart checks, and I have a great physician who's also my coach, and a wonderful team. And so I'm constantly checking it. I'm very in tune with my body. I can pick up on signs and signals and all those things. And because it's a journey, it's not an overnight sensation. And so I went through an extensive amount of testing this year on my 10th anniversary. And 10 years later, I have no clogging. And so the surgery worked very well. I'm in great health. I've not been off work in 10 years. And obviously, I've had increasing responsibilities now ultimately as the chairman and CEO.
That's great.
And so it's been for me a wonderful day. And it's also about perspective. I'm just happy to be alive, right? And so every day for me is a beautiful day. I'm just glad to see it. And so whatever happens in that day, it happens in that day.
Yeah, that's great.
And then tomorrow is a new day.
And I want to ask you specifically about Kaiser's programs that you do for your 200,000 employees. But first, let's go macro. Dean, you've seen so many different programs, so many different companies. Give us, your breakdown of the right way to do it and the mistakes that a lot of people make.
Well, I think Bernard, who I have tremendous respect and love for, is a perfect example of the kinds of things that we're talking about. If you really want to boil it down to its essence of eat well, move more, stress less, and love more, that's it. And sometimes people have a hard time believing that such simple changes can make such a powerful difference, but they do. And in our work over the last now almost 40 years, we've been able to prove for the first time that you can actually reverse heart disease, as you're a perfect example of that. But also these same lifestyle changes that can reverse heart disease can reverse type 2 diabetes, when people get put on blood pressure or cholesterol-lowering drugs, medications, or Lipitor to lower their cholesterol, or lowers blood sugar medications. And they're saying, doctor, how long do I have to take these? They're generally told, well, forever. And sometimes when I lecture, I'll show a cartoon of doctors busily mopping up the floor around a sink that's overflowing. It's like, how long do I have to mop up the floor? It's like forever. Well, why don't we turn off the faucet? And when we turn off the faucet, which to a large degree are the lifestyle choices that we make, our bodies have this remarkable capacity to begin healing, as you've demonstrated, and much more quickly. So heart disease, diabetes, early stage prostate cancer, by extension breast cancer. When you change your lifestyle, it changes your genes, over 500 genes in 3 months, even lengthens telomeres into our chromosomes to control aging. So much of these things are much more dynamic than we had once realized. And the more you change, the more you improve at any age.
Yeah, but when companies decide, okay, we're going to implement a program to encourage our employees to be healthier, you get the email from HR, why do some of those programs work and why do so many of them not work?
Well, first of all, the companies decide to do them because most large companies are self-insured. So the cost savings accrue to their bottom line. But there's more than that. There's one of the most powerful predictors of health, and is also one of the most powerful predictors of productivity, is a sense of meaning and purpose, and the sense that somebody cares about you. And so when a company implements a program, it's basically saying, we care about you, we care about your health, we care about your well-being. That's why we want to make it easier to make healthy choices. That's why we want to support these things. And what we've learned is that fear is not a sustainable motivator, either in politics, as we saw last night, or in the workplace, or in changing your lifestyle. I mean, for a month or two, I imagine after you had your incident 10 years ago, you'd do pretty much anything your doctor told you. And most people would, but only for a month or two. And then fear is too hard to sustain. And it's because we all know we're going to die. It's just a question of when, but people don't want to think about it, so they don't. It's one of the reasons why the adherence to taking drugs like Lipitor, half to two-thirds of people aren't taking them after just 4 to 6 months, even though they're proven value in people with heart disease, because they're fear-based. It's like, take this pill, it's not going to make you feel better, hopefully it won't make you feel worse, to prevent something really awful years down the road that you don't want to think about, so people don't do it. But because these underlying biological mechanisms are so dynamic, fear of dying doesn't work, but joy of living does. And when you make these changes, you feel so much better so quickly, it reframes the reason for making them from fear to joy. Your brain gets more blood. You think more clearly. You can actually grow so many new brain neurons in just a few weeks. Your brain can get measurably bigger. Your skin gets more blood, so you don't age as quickly. Your sexual organs get more blood in the same way that Viagra works. And so for many people, these are choices worth making because what you gain is so much more than what you give up. It's love-based rather than fear-based.
Right. And so Bernard, tell us about some of the specific programs and speak to the broader point that Dean just made.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I do it first and foremost because I care, and I don't want anyone to feel guilty about wherever they are in their life's journey, and so I'm very sensitive to not wanting to put anyone on the defense. I mean, people come in, they're living their lives, they're working hard, they are the brand of Kaiser Permanente, and there isn't a speech that I don't give in which I end with, I want to talk about you taking care of yourself. You cannot take care of 11 million people if 200,000 people are sick or sickly or walking around looking like you're not thriving. The second thing is it's an engagement. It's not a policy. It is an environment that I'm trying to create to be sensitive to how you are exercising, managing stress. What can I do to make the environment a better place for you to thrive in? So we have gyms, we have programs. I do pop-up walks. I invite employees to walk with me around the lake. The last one I had, well, I believe I had 500. The official count was 350.
Right.
So I just rounded up to 500, you know, and then I talk about the foods, and I write about it. I actually take pictures of meals that I cook, and I tweet it out, and I get all kind of replies, which is good because it's part of my speaking up and the environment that I create. And I have employees that will literally stop me and say, "How you doing with the potato chips?" And that's a very good thing for me because one of the lessons learned is that when I am under stress, historically, I would go to salty foods. And so my coach taught me to pay attention, really pay attention to what you are grabbing when you're under stress. And that's a signal to me. So when I know I want salty something, and it's always been in the form of potato chips, that's a signal to me that something is going on with my stress level that I'm not paying attention to.
Can I build on that for a second? Because to me, that's such a beautiful story, and all of it actually. But awareness is always the first step in healing. And when you can make those kind of connections, it's powerful. And I've also learned that, as Bernard just indicated, that information is important, but it's not enough. I mean, if it were, nobody would smoke. It's not like I tell somebody, "Hey, did you know smoking's bad for you, Adam? I want you to quit." And you go, "Gosh, I didn't know that. I'll quit today." You know, it's like everybody knows, but still a lot of people smoke. So I'd ask people, you know, why do you smoke? And why do you overeat or drink too much or work too hard or abuse substances? These behaviors seem so maladaptive. And they'd say, "You don't get it. They're very adaptive. They help us deal with our pain, our loneliness, our depression," which I think is the real epidemic. It's not just heart disease and diabetes, as bad as they are. You know, with the breakdown of the social networks that used to give people a sense of connection and community. And when people are lonely and depressed, they say things like, "I've got 20 friends in this pack of cigarettes, and they're always there for me, and nobody else is. You're going to take away my 20 friends? What are you going to give me?" Or food fills that void. Or actually a well-known former food writer at the Times here told me, "Fat coats my nerves and numbs the pain." Or, you know, working all the time numbs the pain. Or video games, or drugs, or alcohol. You know, we have lots of ways of numbing or killing or literally or figuratively bypassing the pain. But to me, the pain's the messenger. It's saying, "Hey, listen up, pay attention." And so that can be a great catalyst for change. And the pain can come in the form of your own personal pain, or if you're running a large corporation, looking at your bottom line and you see you know, we spent in this country $3 trillion on healthcare costs last year, which are mostly sick care costs, 86% of which are for chronic diseases that can be largely prevented or even reversed by changing lifestyle. And it's one of the reasons why Medicare and now most insurance companies are covering our program, because we did a study with Highmark, Blue Cross Blue Shield. They found they cut their overall healthcare costs in half in the first year, and by 400% in the subgroup of people that they'd spent at least $25,000 on in the previous year. And Mutual of Omaha found they saved $30,000 per patient in the first year. Now, why that's important is that a lot of corporations and a lot of insurance companies used to say, "Why should we spend our money today for some future benefit that someone else is going to get because they're going to change companies?" But if you can show that if the changes are big enough, and particularly if you use it not only to prevent disease, but actually to treat or reverse it, the cost savings are so dramatic and they occur in the first year, it really reframes that whole debate.
Right. And are you seeing that, Bernard?
Yeah. You know, one of the things that we announced last year, we are building a medical school as I speak, and we're going to teach future physicians. And we decided to do this because we want to talk about how a physician should be trained in the 21st century, how to use technology, how to use information, how to manage the holistic approach to an individual, not the organs, right? So not to be a heart specialist and that's it, a kidney specialist and that's it.
Beautiful.
How do you look at the whole environment in which a person exists in? That's the approach that we take with the workforce. It's about the whole environment that the person exists in. And the last thing that I would say, I don't want to set myself up where I'm sitting on a pedestal, if you will, condemning the individuals in the organization. I am one of them and they are me. And so I make it real. I love donuts. I love glazed donuts. So I can eat one right now. And so
we get a donut up here.
So if I must have a glazed donut, I learn to take a piece of it and I must throw the rest of it away right away.
By the way, he did this at breakfast this morning with a blueberry muffin. So
I have to. If I didn't throw it away, I'll eat it. And there's been a couple of times I would walk by the garbage and go, I wonder how dirty it is in there. But I wouldn't take it out the garbage. But it's those kind of things that you kind of pick up on, and it comes from not depriving myself, right? And I talk about, I'm so blessed to be alive, and so my days are very important. The last thing I want to do is go to bed at night thinking about, man, I sure wish I had that donut today, right? I don't want that to be the memory. And my doctor taught me, don't deprive yourself of those habits. Just know how to manage it, right? So if you eat a donut every now and then, you're not going to die. But if you eat them every day, like you used to do, then you really are causing yourself harm.
Well, and I do the same thing with chocolate. That's my indulgence, but you can make that a form of meditation. When you really focus on something, you can get more pleasure with fewer calories. You just close your eyes, you just let it melt on your tongue and watch all the harmonics of flavors as it kind of goes down your palate and your throat. It's an incredibly sensual experience, and you don't need much of it to do that, as opposed to eating mindlessly, where you can eat while watching a movie or something, and suddenly the bag of popcorn's empty. It's like, who ate this? Right. And so, but I also want to build on what you said about about educating doctors, because the system right now, if you have to see a new patient every 8 to 10 minutes, you don't have time to talk about their diet or their lifestyle or what's going on in their family or their home or work or any of those things. You basically, you go through the problem list, you listen to the heart and lungs, you write a prescription. It's profoundly unsatisfying for both doctors and patients. It's one of the reasons why most doctors wouldn't recommend medicine as a career. We have among the highest rates of divorce and drug addiction and suicide, and most people are trying to get out of the profession. So now that Medicare and other insurance companies are covering our program, they're paying for 72 hours of training. So we're training hospitals and clinics with this company called ShareCare around the country, and they spend 72 hours. But it's not just the doctor. It's a doctor, a nurse, a yoga teacher, exercise physiologist, dietitian, and psychologist. And they'll pay for 72 hours of training, not just 8 or 10 minutes. So they come for 18 4-hour sessions. They get an hour of exercise, an hour of yoga meditation, an hour of a group meal with a lecture, and an hour of a support group, which does exactly what you were saying, which is to create a safe environment where people can just be authentic and real with each other in the same way that you are, and you set that amazing example with your employees, to talk about what's really going on in your life without fear that somebody's going to judge you or reject you or give you glib advice. The kind of thing that we used to have when we had extended families or neighborhoods with 2 or 3 generations of people. And it's a primal human need, that need for connection and community. And study after study has shown that people who are lonely and depressed are 3 to 10 times more likely to get sick and die prematurely. And when we work on that level, we find that for all the reasons you're talking about, that people are much more likely to make lifestyle choices that are life-enhancing than ones that are self-destructive, whether it's at the workplace or in their home.
I wanted to build on that, and now I'll put on my hat as the CEO of my company. That's a $65 billion company, and we take care of 11 million people. So the way I think about it in that context is health care plays a very small role in the social determinants of health.
That's right.
So if you look at 100%, about 40% of what will impact a person's health is behavior. About 30% is genetics, right? About 20% is place where you live. We used to think it was race, right? Discrimination. It's also place, the environment that you actually live in.
Your zip code.
Your zip code, right? And then the 10% is health care. So health care, which is $3-something trillion, plays a very small role. I'm more interested in impacting 11 million people when they go to the grocery store than when they come in for health care, because it's too late there. Mm-hmm. And so the second thing I'm working on is eventually I want to see a medical device somewhere that you get to wear. Why is that important? Because it'll start teaching you different things about your body that you should know. What is my sugar level, which is energy? Especially after you eat. How do I deal with certain things? And it's really moving the early warning signal up front. I've used the recent example of, unfortunately, what happened to Hillary Clinton the day she got sick. Well, in my future world, that will never happen, because she would get a signal much ahead of time to say, you're dehydrating, your blood pressure is going up, you need to go sit down and get some water, or if you don't, an hour from now, you will forever regret that you waited that long because you're getting the early warning signals, before that crisis ever happened.
Right.
That's true.
And since you did go there with the political thing just now, this guy was at the debate in person last night, and so I'm going to go there. Any observations? Let's keep politics out of this. Let's talk about health.
How can you keep politics out of a political debate?
No, and all of us were watching on TV. What did you see that we couldn't see?
Well, full disclosure is I've been working with President Clinton and Hillary Clinton for many years and really love them and respect them. So you can take my comments in that context. Donald Trump has described himself as on the fast food diet, and he looked like it. He's overweight, his complexion was pasty, he was sweating, he was drinking water constantly during the whole thing. He was not a paragon of health and didn't really inspire. I mean, the irony is that with all the criticisms that he's been making about Mrs. Clinton, Secretary Clinton's health, I mean, he was the one who really looked unhealthy yesterday. And you could really see it in person even more than on TV.
I'm going to go to questions in a second. One last question for Bernard. You've got 200,000 employees. I mean, with all the programs that you're implementing, certainly there are few people on your staff who say, this is a nanny state telling me what I can eat and drink. I mean, certainly some people must push back a little.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, even on my team. Because I go through these fits and starts. I've been on a vegetarian diet. And so I think everybody should be on a vegetarian diet. So all of a sudden the menus are all vegetables. And one of the executives, when I was out of the room, one of the executives said to my chief of staff, with all due respect, will somebody tell Bernard not everyone had heart disease? and that is a reality, right. Chuck, right? Right? And I have this thing called the American flag in my office and in the boardroom. And I tell people that we're all blessed to be in this great country where you can speak your mind. And the last thing I want you to do is give up your freedom of speech when you come into my environment. So therefore, that person had the right to say what they wanted to say about, not everyone is dealing with heart disease. And that's a true statement. And that's what I try to pay attention to. I think people like the fact that I'm passionate about everything, right. But then there's a judgment of when you're starting to be judgmental. Right. And I have one member of my team, he would deliberately at times bring in something that he knows I'm going to frown at, but he does it to kind of get me going. And then every now and then I would say, give me a piece of that. But that's fun stuff that is with our team.
That's great.
Can I just say one more thing about the Clintons, just since you're out on the subject, is that back in '93, when after Bill Clinton became president, I met with Hillary Clinton. She asked me to train the chefs to cook for them at the White House and then Camp David, Air Force One, the Navy mess, to cook. And I thought that was really great leadership. And then 6 years ago, when his bypass clogged up, he was told that it was all in his genes. And I sent him an email. I said, it's not all in your genes, because we've done studies showing you can actually reverse heart disease and you can actually change your gene expression and fairly quickly. So that's when he began eating a vegetarian diet. He has fish once a week. There was an article, by the way, in the Times that came out a couple years ago saying that somebody had weaned him off this diet. And just to make it, I've been trying to get them to issue a correction, but they haven't, but that's another story. But he's on the same diet that he's been on for 6 years, and he's doing really well. And I think it's, whatever your politics, when a former president, particularly one that was known for not eating particularly healthfully, eats and lives a lot more healthily, I think that really sets a great example for everybody.
A couple of quick questions in the back, please.
Hi, can you please talk about your perspective on cooking at home as part of this sort of social connection, eating well, and how you see that fit in, and if any of your plans encourage cooking at home?
Oh, absolutely. Before ever dealing with my own particular heart disease, I love to cook. I cook all the time. I will go home with my tie on and I can cook. But I had to reorient myself in cooking. Before my heart situation, I mean, I love fried foods. I still do. I have to be very careful not to eat fried foods. So I had to reorient myself around how to cook. We just opened the African American Museum, as you know, in this country over the weekend. Kaiser Permanente was one of the major sponsors. Ironically, what we sponsored was the cafe, Home Sweet Home Cafe.
It's not ironic, it's beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. It's sponsored by Kaiser Permanente. And it's across from the Oprah Winfrey Theater, which is really great, right? And we gave away cookbooks about how to cook soul food without hurting yourselves. And so it's that kind of orientation. The second thing is, I grew up in the kitchen. So our family gatherings and family discussions and everything was always in a kitchen environment. And I use the kitchen now for social activities and cooking parties and ways of gathering. And I find it to be extremely relaxing and stress-free.
And also studies have shown that when families who cook together, they have better academic performance, less depression, less dropouts, every metric you look at. And I love companies like Purple Carrot and Blue Apron that make it easier for people to do that.
Yeah, that's great. There's a question right here.
Hi, it's really inspiring and amazing to hear what you've done for your 200,000 employees around encouraging behavior change. Can you share a little bit about your thoughts and plans that you have in place around putting programs together for your 11 million members, including myself, that encourage and behavior change around the notion that food is medicine and can help?
Yeah.
What we're going to do.
Yeah. A couple of things, and I really appreciate your question, and thanks for being a member. I got you in that 11 million count. Anybody else? We are going through these phases, and it's part of the learning journey that we're on. So one of the big milestone moments was when I talked about place. We learned a lot about many of our members are in communities in which they didn't have stores and other ways of getting fruits and vegetables. And so we started offering that with the farmers markets program around the country. And today we have like 65 farmer markets around the country where we actually have now a massive agreement with organic growers, and we bring in the fresh fruits and vegetables anytime from 1 to 3 times a week into those communities. Then we added to that how to cook healthy foods. And we started to learn that many communities just, sort of like my upbringing, you had a certain way that you cooked, and we were going through the reorientation of how to help our members to cook in more healthy ways. And
that is like so visionary, I just want to say.
Yeah, when one of my milestones at Kaiser Permanente was I was the person in charge of the brand positioning, and I came up with Thrive. You may have heard of that. Well, when we first launched Thrive, the symbol that we used to launch Thrive was a broccoli. It was a broccoli. And it was beautiful. In fact, the broccoli growers told me this is the best publicity we had since George Bush said he hated broccoli. And I mean, literally, we had a broccoli that we featured. I'll never forget one of the head physicians when I showed the commercial that we were going to run during the World Series or the Olympics. He said, he looked at the commercial, there was a beautiful broccoli, and it was about our anthem, that we stand for health. And that was the launching of the Thrive campaign that we've now been doing for almost a decade. And
by the way, the word thrive conjures up all the wonderful things. It's not fear-based, it's joy and love-based, which is, it makes you feel good to do these things.
So we ran this commercial, and there was the broccoli, and the lead physician just stared at the screen after it went off. And I said, so what did you think? He said, is that really what we're going to use? I said, yes. He said, I hope it has a white coat, as a physician symbol. And that's the way we launched it. It wasn't a medical image. It was an image of a fresh vegetable.
That's great. The three of us are going to go for a pop-up walk now. But please join me in thanking Dean and Bernard for their insights.
Thank you.